Hi guys, and welcome back. In this video, we're going to take a look at the budget APIs in the AWS Cost Explorer service using PowerShell, obviously. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in here. So we've got a get command on the aws.tools.budgets PowerShell module. So go ahead and hit F8 on that, and that will show you all the different PowerShell commands that are available for budgets. So we have things like retrieving budget information, so we can get a list of budgets here. We can get a list of any actions that are configured on budgets, which is a relatively new feature. We also have things like getting just the budget itself individually if we'd like to. We can also manually invoke budget actions using invoke BGT budget action. We can create new budgets. We can create new budget actions and delete them and update existing budgets as well. So a lot of different options here that allow us to just do basic resource management tasks against our AWS budgets. Now, for starters, I wanted to head over to the billing management console here and actually show you what a budget actually looks like inside of an AWS account. So here we are in the budgets, and you can see I've got a budget name. So its name is $50. The amount is also $50. You don't necessarily have to have the name correspond to the value, but it's a good idea to do that just for sanity's sake. And then I don't have any actions configured for this one. You can see that the threshold has been exceeded because my forecasted budget here, my actual budget is $56.75 right now, and I only budgeted $50. So I am actually technically over that budget for this particular period here. I guess I spun up too many EC2 instances or something like that. But you can actually see what my historical budget information looks like here. So typically I'm pretty well under budget here. Just really depends on what services I'm using for different types of tasks here. And you can see that my budget variance, or the delta between my actual spend and my budgeted spend, is $6.75, and I'm 13% over budget. So budgets basically have a few key properties, things like budget type. You can do budgets against cost or usage or things like that, and a lot of different options there. So what we're going to do is go ahead and take a look at get BGT budget list here. And this allows us to retrieve the budgets from our AWS account. And as you can see, it actually wants me to pass in an account ID parameter. So I just selected the command itself. I didn't actually execute it with this account ID parameter. And if you do that, then it'll prompt you to specify your account ID. Now, the security token service, which is part of kind of the identity and access management piece of AWS, there's a command called get STS caller identity. And if you run that command just by itself, it spits out an object with a few key properties. It tells you what your access key ID is here. It's actually a user ID. I don't know why they name it that, but that's just what it's named. And it shows you your access key ID. And then over here, we've got our user ARN. So this is the IAM user ARN that made the API call. And then over here, we've got the account property, which shows us our 12-digit account ID. So what we can do is just call get STS caller identity and then use the dot notation to grab the account ID. That'll give us our 12-digit account ID, and we can then pass that value into the account ID property on get BGT budget list. So if I hit F8 on that line there, I actually got this error message saying that I am not authorized to perform budgets view budget on this particular resource. So I thought I attached a policy that allowed me access to it, but it looks like maybe I missed a particular API call. And sure enough, I have pricing and cost explorer, but I completely forgot to attach a permission. I'm actually logged in with a different IAM role right now, so that's why I have permission to manipulate these policies and users and things like that. So let's go ahead and head back over to our policy that we created before. I'll just search for CBT, open up our policy, and then we'll go ahead and edit policy, and then we'll add a new permission statement here, and we'll choose the budget service, and then we'll just choose all actions for now. And then for resources, we'll say all resources, and then click review policy and save changes. And now we have pricing, budgets, and cost explorer. So budgets is the new one here, so we should have access to that now. Let's switch back over to VS Code here, and we'll go ahead and rerun line number 6 here. And we now get a result. So let's go ahead and explore budget list. Do budget list here. And this is a fairly complex type. So a budget is a kind of a complex object that contains a variety of different properties. First of all, we have the budget name, which is just a simple string value. The budget type is kind of a string value too, although it has a set of predefined values on it. If we actually pipe this into get member, you'll see budget type is actually an amazon.budgets.budget type, which is probably a .NET enumeration that has a bunch of predefined values on it. So even though it looks like a string up here, it's actually an enumeration that's being represented as a string in the PowerShell terminal here. And then over here, we've got calculated spend. So like, what is our actual spend like? And then up here, we've got our limit. So what is our spending limit that we specified for this particular budget? And then we've got cost types down here that drills a little bit more detail into the different types of costs that we've incurred. Let's go ahead and take a look at cost types. You can see, does it include any credits? Were any credits applied to our account? Were anything discounted? Were there any recurring costs? Were there any refunds? Things like that. So the answer to a lot of those is just a Boolean value. Is it either true or false? And things like that. Then you can see things like the last updated time. So I actually created this a while ago, but it looks like I've actually updated it fairly recently. So that's just the last updated time for the actual budget itself. And then there's also a time period here. If you recall, we passed in time periods to different API calls before. So let me just plug in .time period here. And this budget is starting 5/1/2020. So I actually did create it quite a while ago. And then it ends in basically the infinite future, 2087. I probably won't even be alive then. Cool. So basically that's the budget data structure here. There's a bunch of different properties that specify all those different configuration options on them. However, you can also create budgets using PowerShell. So to do that, there is a command called new BGT budget right here. And very similarly to the account ID before, we specify the account ID right here. And then we pass in the account ID from getSTSCallerIdentity, which if you recall from earlier, just a few minutes ago, that gives us our 12-digit account ID. Now we can also specify the budget limit amount parameter. That specifies what we want our actual budget quantity to be. So in my other example over here, I had a budget set up for $50 right here. And then my current value is 56, which exceeds that, hence why the budget is kind of in breach mode, basically, where it's saying that the threshold has been breached and all these red alarm bells going off over here. And for the time unit, I basically want to say, is this daily? Is this quarterly? Is this annual? What do I want? And this is a set of values too. So let me do control space here again. As you can see, it's auto-completing these values here. So we've got annual, daily, monthly, quarterly. Typically, most people think of budgets as being kind of monthly things. It's like, I don't want to spend more than 50 a month or 5,000 a month or something like that. So we'll just set the time unit to monthly here. And then if we scroll over a little bit, we've got a few more parameters here. We have the budget name. I just called this CBT Trevor 100 that corresponds to my budget limit amount over here. And then lastly, we have another parameter here, which is that budget type where we saw it was cost. However, it actually does support some other values as well. So you can use RI coverage, RI utilization, you can do savings plan coverage, savings plan utilization. Those actually all kind of tie in together. It's basically just a way for you to save money on your EC2 costs. But I'm just going to plug in just the overall cost here, which is just literally the value cost. So now if I hit F8 to run this command, you can see we get a value saying that the time unit should not be null. So let's go ahead and take a look at the help for the new BGT budget command and see what it's looking for that budget limit unit parameter. All right, so I'm just looking for the parameters here called budget limit unit. I'm actually going to exit out of this. I'll hit Q there, and then I'll do get command on new BGT budget. We'll do get command and paste that in, and then we'll go ahead and drill into the parameters property of that command, and then we'll go ahead and look for the budget. All right, so here's the property we want here. So it's called budget limit unit. So let's go ahead and just grab that one. And it looks like that's a string value. So let's go ahead and head over to the documentation for budgets and figure out what we can pass into there. So I'll go ahead and navigate over to the API reference docs here, drill into budgets, and then we'll look at the create budget API here. And then we'll go ahead and look for the budget limit unit here. And for the budget limit unit, we can specify a value of USD here. So let's plug in USD for the budget limit unit parameter here. And if we hit F8 on that line, you can see that it ran successfully here. So let's go ahead and check our work. We can either use the get BGT budget list command or the AWS Management Console to verify our work. And sure enough, I now have 2 budgets instead of just 1, and it's showing it here in list format. So PowerShell has a couple of different formatting options. This is just list format where you've got the property name on the left, followed by a colon, and then the property value on the right-hand side. So my budget name, sure enough, is CBT Trevor. For budget type, I have cost. And then for last updated time, you can see I just updated it. And this is actually UTC time because it is definitely not February 23rd at midnight local time right now. So that's pretty much all there is to creating budgets. You can use PowerShell to automate the creation and destruction of your budgets whenever you want to set those up. You could automate it at particular times of the month if you just want to get notifications towards the end of the month, for example, and use this to get, send notifications to your team in Slack or any other chat application to let them know when your budgets have been reached. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.